Welcome to the engineering section of User Groups Live. We're going to give you a sneak peek behind the curtain at how engineering works, and that will be followed by the QA and the level 3 section. So, my name is Jason Simpson. I'm an engineering director based out of the York office. For the last couple of years we've been mostly focused on the new user experience, and I'm pleased to be able to share some of the ways that we've been working over the last couple of years with you today. I've been working at Anaplan for 3 years and thoroughly enjoyed all of my time here. It's a fantastic company to work for. And I'm joined here today by Walton, who's the lead of the engineering productivity team. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I lead the engineering productivity team, where I'm a manager, and we're essentially the team that is responsible for looking after all of the what we call the build infrastructure behind Anaplan. So that is all of the software and infrastructure that takes the code from developers' laptops and sort of gets it towards what we call the production areas, and that is essentially into your hands, is how you can think of that.
Excellent. Maybe you could give us a quick insight into a day of life of the engineer.
Yeah, sure. So at Anaplan we use what we call the Agile Methodology, or the Agile way of working. So Agile is essentially all about being responsive to customers' needs, shipping early and often. So Springboard, new user experience is a good example of that, whereby we had the new user experience in customers' hands quite quickly through kind of a beta program. And at least in engineering productivity team, we use an implementation of Agile that we call Kanban, which is this idea of sort of limiting the amount of work that you have as a priority at any one time. And that doesn't work for all engineering teams, but at least for us it works quite well, because it means that we can be very responsive. So we consider our customers, for example, to be largely people like you, for example, and your teams, who are the engineers trying to get things safely and efficiently into production. But your teams, for example, would not use Kanban, is that right?
Yeah, we use a Scrum Methodology, which is basically where we break work into 2-week increments. Sometimes it's going to be shorter than that, sometimes it'll be longer, but we're always working in an iterative way as well. But we always plan for 2 weeks worth of work at a time. The Scrum Ceremonies are basically we'll plan work in what we call a sprint planning ceremony, followed by daily stand-ups where we synchronise what we're doing every day. We also do what we call backlog refinement, where we're just looking ahead and estimating the size of the work so that we can give good roadmap indications to our customers. And then probably the most important part of any agile process is the learning. So at the end of every iteration, we're constantly reflecting on how a particular iteration has gone, how we can do better next time. And we don't necessarily wait for that 2-week window. There's learning opportunities everywhere, all day, every day. We pick up on those and we relentlessly go after improving the way that we work.
So it's all about continuous improvement as well, isn't it? And
absolutely.
We're quite keen on this idea of sort of shipping often, which is something that actually has been exemplified largely by the new user experience lately. I was wondering if you could expand a little bit upon how we manage that.
Absolutely. So there's been some very key changes to the way that we engineer for the new user experience. When we started off this project, it was not only about building the right thing for our customers, but building it in the right way. And that means a significant amount of automated testing so that we're fully confident in every single change that's made by an engineer. And also deployment automation, that's another key change for us. Mm-hmm. If you can try to visualize what happens when a developer makes a change, it'll go from, it'll build the software first, it'll go through a test phase where it's going to critically examine whether or not a particular build is good to go live. And then once it passes that test phase, we go into a deployment phase. And that's where we've made some other significant improvements, which allows us to ship our software a couple of times a week at the moment, but we're hoping to be able to do that even more responsively. On the deployment side, we can do that without downtime, and that's definitely a really key thing for us in terms of not impacting the customer experience while we're making these changes. We need to be able to ship those in a way that doesn't affect what people are currently doing in the tool. And so that's been some of the stuff that the engineering productivity team have helped us with in terms of rolling out those deployment technologies.
Yeah, and Anaplan have made significant investments in what we call container orchestration technologies pioneered by people like Google over the past 5 to 10 years. I don't know how long they've been going now. And the central idea is the way that we have been working historically is that we have this quite sort of constrained build system whereby engineers have to go down this sort of rigid pathway towards production, and there's a lot of manual testing, very, very thorough testing, but it's quite labor intensive in many ways, whereas what containers bring us is this idea that you can define a kind of a virtual machine, almost a very lightweight virtual machine in which you can run all of your tests, and it's as if it's running in the customer's hands essentially. And so developers get this incredible flexibility and reassurance that what they're actually testing is the thing that actually goes towards these production areas. And we've made a lot of investment in this technology within our production estate, so into our data centers, and also in our build infrastructure as well, to enable all of these automated tests to happen. And as Jason said, hopefully that will result in, in the near future, we'll be looking at more and more kind of zero downtime deployments and improved scaling and resilience and things like this. But along those lines, I mean, one thing that I imagine a lot of customers wonder is if they are seeing changes like every day, which is possible right now with our current process, then it can be quite difficult to, what it's like when people change things, when Facebook changed like a button or something and then it's not the same when they click on it. And people tend to get quite upset by that, understandably, because their user experience has changed and all the workflows that they experience every day have changed. So it's probably worth talking about like how we plan on communicating that change back to customers and what they can expect to see changing either on a daily or a weekly basis in the future.
Absolutely. So one of the key things to get across here is the fact that even though we are able to release our software more readily, we don't anticipate large-scale changes for our customer experience without any sort of notification to our customers. What this does enable is us to provide a much better customer service, and this is a key shift for us in the new user experience. We're able to take the bugs that are annoying you, those little usability issues, or even some enhancement requests that we've had, and we're able to get those things out the door in your hands much more quickly and very safely too. Big feature releases, we use what we call feature flagging, so we ensure that those big features are not in your hands until we are absolutely ready. The customers know that we're going to be making those changes. We know that the field and our internal teams are ready to support those changes, and that's when we think about turning those big features on. So there's not really going to be much change for those big features in the way that we work.
And feature flagging also gives us the ability to, for example, roll out changes more gradually, doesn't it? Sort of enable different features for different customers in a more safe way. And
yeah. Yeah, and the gradual thing is probably key here for us internally as well. In engineering, shipping more frequently, smaller changes is actually like a really good risk mitigation strategy. If we're shipping code that's been planned and developed for, say, 2 to 3 months, that's actually quite hard for us to remember what we did 2 months ago. So that can be a bit more intensive in terms of diagnosing those issues. However, if we're just shipping the changes that we made yesterday or the day before, we know absolutely what code we changed. We know how we can support those changes, and if there are any issues that arise with it, which unfortunately in software bugs are sort of unavoidable, how do how do we respond to that? And that's what we're optimizing for here, being able to provide a much better level of customer service to our customers.
Mm-hmm. So what is it actually like working in the York office? Because I imagine a lot of customers will be interested in our engineering setup. So we've got four actually engineering sites now at the moment. York was the first engineering site. It's our current research and development headquarters, if you like. And it's where the kind of the whole Anaplan thing started in York. We're a Yorkshire company originally, and the engineering is sort of centred in York. What is it actually like on a daily basis coming into this office and being an engineer?
Oh, it's electric. There's so much energy in the building, a real appetite to service our customers' needs, and I think there's just that little extra level of pride in this office, because this is where Anaplan was founded and created. So we've got that history, which really gives us a sense of pride as we're working here. I think it's excellent cultural aspects to
the culture. Actually is fantastic, I have to say. We've literally had somebody leave for another opportunity and come back because they realised actually the culture in Anaplan was actually what they wanted all along. And if you look at where we are now and where we're heading, it's quite an exciting time at the moment at Anaplan, isn't it? We're making some amazing sort of changes behind the scenes. We've made some key hires, I know, in engineering over the past year or so, all around this theme of transforming the way that we do engineering at Anaplan, and already we've seen massive benefits. I mean, from just the conception of the new user experience product going into production, on a sort of daily, weekly basis. We've made lots of improvements like that. Where do you see Anaplan engineering being in, say, a year's time, 2 years' time, 5 years' time? What sort of things do you see happening at the moment?
Excellent question. I think we are getting to this, well, one of the key focuses for us over the next, in the coming years, is to be able to ship without downtime across the whole estate. That's obviously been pioneered by the new user experience, and now we're ready to take that to the next level and be able to have much less service disruption for our customers, particularly in the planned nature. So that's going to be a big change, and that, as I mentioned earlier, does allow us to provide a much better level of customer service. So we'll not only be an R&D group, we'll be a customer service group as well.
It's all about kind of expanding our customer first ethos that you guys will already be quite familiar with, but we're going to be sort of expanding it deeper into engineering, if you like. So the whole idea behind what we call continuous integration and continuous deployment is that engineers will sort of be a lot more engaged with customers, engaged with the issues that they face every day, the kinds of the features that they're after. So engineers will essentially be a lot closer to customers. And we're hoping to roll out things like, engineers going to more sort of community events and things like that, hopefully. It's just a much nicer way of working. Ultimately, will satisfy the customer more frequently, perhaps.
Yeah, that's absolutely the most rewarding thing, getting that feedback from customers, getting to CPX events and things like that. That's what we really love to do.
Because I know you guys have had good feedback for the new user experience in some of those community events so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think we've got some questions to answer. Speaking of customer feedback, so
yes.
Should we get the iPad?
So okay, we've got a couple of questions, which is really nice. It's nice that you guys are engaging with us. So we have, assuming there is an idea from community which is valid, accurate, popular, what's the typical timeline to have this idea implemented?
It's a good question. So Obviously, it depends on what the idea is, and there's different levels of effort required to engineer different solutions to different things. But one thing that we have done, as mentioned in this session, is we're optimizing that lead time. We don't want to be, once we've got that idea developed and ready, we want to minimize the time that takes to get into your hands. So and take a lot of the weight out of being able to do that. We don't want to wait for Saturday downtime windows. We want to be able to ship that as readily as possible. So all the changes we've made are absolutely so that we can respond to those requests as much as possible. I can give an example of earlier this year, which might help. We had a feature request for a customer that was looking to go live with the new user experience, but they were missing a couple of key features / enhancements. We basically went back to the engineering teams and we said, here's the gap. They need this doing by such and such a time, and the engineering teams found a way to get that done, and we were able to get that out the door in time for those customers. So good example there of where we're able to be really responsive.
And having this kind of feature flagging mechanism there is critical, because it means that we can have all of that working code all fully tested in production, and we can just enable that feature whenever we like, essentially. And it doesn't even have to be us that actually enables that feature. It can be done by other parties, which is really nice. We have a related question, which is, what is the best way to keep track of what new features are on the development roadmap?
Excellent question. So the roadmap, I believe, is published we talk about that a lot at our community events and CPX events and things like that, so that's a good way to keep up to date. We do post back to the community with what's coming and what we're doing sort of in the immediate term and what we've just done, so that's a good way to keep track. Probably worth posting that question for the product team, who I think are on immediately after us as well, who are responsible for communicating those changes as well.
Yeah, and before we leave off, we do have a call to action. We were talking earlier about having change go into production on a regular basis, and what we'd like to know from our customers is, how do you guys want to know about that change? So in other words, should we have a page that is published with all of the changes, no matter how minor they are? We changed the color of this button from red to green or whatever. Or do you just want to be notified about the large scale changes? Do you want a feed you can subscribe to? Do you want to be emailed every single day? So right after this, go on to the Ideas Exchange and post your ideas around this. We are taking feedback, because right now it's we've got some ideas ourselves, I think, but it's quite a difficult problem in the software industry at the moment. It's how you notify people of change when you're making change quite often, right?
Absolutely, great one.
Okay, we got one more question. What is the best way to track if a bug, confirmed via incident /L3, is getting fixed or included into platform update release?
Well, I don't want to speak out of turn on that one. I think our level 3 team would be best to answer that, and they're coming right up after our session. So on that note, I think we're gonna wrap up, and thank you for joining us. It's been great to speak to you all about how engineering works at Anaplan.
Yeah, thank you.